Welcome one and all to yet another Kings of War tournament report. There will be deep probing analysis, and as you can see, suddenly it looks a lot more professional because I've got my face in the corner of the screen in a little box, which is a sure sign of professionalism when it comes to video live streaming. And I'm also keeping my eye on the live chat on one side of the screen there, so if anyone wants to offer any tactical advice or wants to just heap praise upon my tactical mastery and wizardry, then feel free. I've got my army list to hand, so let's crack into this then, shall we? So this tournament was the Art of War, which was put on by the Northern Kings, and it took place in Sheffield at the Outpost at the weekend. So let's start diving straight into my army first of all, shall we? And as you can see, this is the first time that my League of Rhordia army has hit the table in a tournament. Only 2 prior games with the army at all, so we'll see whether that is an ultimate disaster for me or whether I can get some beginner's luck with them perhaps. So, beautiful images there, I think we can all agree. I have in this army, I have halfling spearlings, 2 regiments and a horde, which you can see at the front of the picture here. And a lot of these units have been given small artifacts, mainly because I had a certain amount of points left over at the end, not enough for a full unit, and with the limited models available I decided rather than taking things out and putting different things in that were slightly more expensive, I decided to just tack little artifacts onto various units. So with that in mind, the halfling spearlings, the horde have the hammer of measured force, which I probably would have put on them regardless, because it's a nice one for them, they've got quite a lot of attacks. The 2 regiments have the blade of slashing and the mace of crushing, which isn't too exciting at all, but just there for the points. We've got a horde of halfling archers who have the jar of 4 winds, which I've been recommended it in the past to put on archer hordes. I don't think I've tried it, at least not recently, with my goblins, but I decided to put that on them. That way I don't have to deploy them so far forward, and if the first turn is thrust upon me, then I'm not having to move and get that negative modifier to the shooting. Then we've got some halfling knights, which are on the left of the picture there, and they have the diadem of dragonkind, which is an interesting thing. I'm looking for a particular combo, which I'll tell you about when I get to the other part of that. Then, oh by the way, the halfling spearlings are all part of the formation, which is the we've had a second breakfast formation, which means that there's also a master sergeant in this army list, and he is in the top right, mounted on a skeletal horse, and he's got a bow. So with that formation, they go up to defense 4, all the spearlings, and every one of those 4 units gains ensnare, which makes them quite scary actually. When you combine that with phalanx and stealthy, they suddenly become quite difficult to remove. Then we've got the ghostly honor guard on the right of the screen there, and they've got Makwar's potion of the caterpillar, which is nice. We've got a halfling iron beast, which is the giant monstrosity on the left. We've got a battle shrine, which is the giant crab, attack its weak point for massive damage. And then there's a duke on ancient winged Arrowles, who's right in the middle at the back there. And he's got the brew of haste, which puts him up to speed 11, so hopefully he's going to be threatening, and even if there are enemy flyers around, he's still going to be able to outspeed most of those and kick some serious butts, or if not, do some serious annoying of the enemy. We've got an army standard bearer with the boomstick. He's right front and centre of the army there. And he's not actually a halfling standard bearer, so he can inspire everything, even things that aren't technically halflings. So that would include the honor guard and the battle shrine, so he can inspire both of those. He would also be able to inspire dogs of war had I taken any, but there aren't any in this list. The master sergeant I already told you about. Then we've got halfling sorcerer, which is the other mounted character in the back left. He is equipped with obviously the mount, and he's got lightning bolt in addition to his wind blast. So he's got a couple of options there. So one thing I'm thinking going into this tournament is a little combo that I can use with the knights, because with fast cavalry they're nimble as well, which is not going to make that much of a difference, but it allows them to kind of nip round units, look into the flank, use the diadem of dragonkind to flame them, and if they turn around to face, kind of dance around them again. They're only speed 7 though, so it's not guaranteed. It's not as easy as doing something similar with Fleabag Sniffs, for example. But also, if I come up against a lot of speed 6, for example, ogre infantry, then, or trolls, something like that, then I can move to just within range to use the diadem on them, and then use the Wind Blast Sorcerer to push them back out of their charge range again. So they've been hit with the flames, and then they're being pushed away. So that's something I want to try out, hopefully, in this tournament. And that is the entire list. So let's go through some more pictures. You can see some lovely close-ups here, of course. My main ambition for this tournament is to try and get a healthy mid-table position in the rankings, and maybe win some other prize as well, like best sportsmanship for not taking any volley guns, or one of the best army awards. There are 2 best army awards available at this tournament, in fact. So the 2 highest rated armies out of all the players' votes will get a little trophy. So I'm hoping I can snap up one of those, since it's the first appearance of an army that's unique looking, so it's probably going to grab people's attention. So that's the best time to try and win a prize like that. So round 1 is a new scenario, which is in the new Clash of Kings book, which I do have, by the way, but this tournament was still using the previous Clash of Kings rules, since the book has only just started hitting people's doorsteps, so it would be a bit crazy to use it. But one of the scenarios was in use, and in this one, there are objectives on both sides of the battlefield, 3 on each, and when you claim an objective, when you control an objective on your opponent's half, it then disappears and you get a victory point. You can't take the ones on your own half. So it doesn't matter at which point during the game you take those objectives, it's just at some stage you want to control them and they disappear. And then there's also a point for holding the centre one at the end as well. Got a couple of people in the chat already, so that's nice. So here is game 1, and this is against ogres. And the 2 games that I've played previously with Rhordia were both against ogres. So this list is very, very different from what I've been playing against, though. There's a pretty solid kind of ogre list that quite a few people tend to use, which is very, very different from this. This doesn't have any chariots, which people seem to like taking now since they added that formation that beefs them up a bit. But this is apparently inspired by one of the top Spanish players, and it's got a lot of boomers in it. I think there are 3 hordes of boomers. There's siege breakers, there's shooters, and there's boomer sergeants all over the place. There's just tons of breath attack. So let's have a look down the line here. So on my right flank, I've got the Iron Beast behind one of the regiments of Spearlings. The knights are next to him, and there's the small regiment of archers there. And the Duke, what I would like to have done with him in most games is put him right out on the flank and just send him 22 inches forwards in the first turn him sideways, and then people are just confused. They don't know what to do about him. Do they chase him down? Do they turn everything to face him and get flanked by other things? Just drives people's battle plans into pure chaos if you have a flyer that can just get in that flanking position. But considering the amount of breath attacks I'm facing here, there wasn't really a good place for him to do that, so I'm going to have to just hold him back a bit. In the middle here, we've got the big horde of Spearlings, which are quite tasty. If they can come up against something like the siege breakers, who have that high defence at the front, then with the Hammer of Measured Force that could come into play. You'll see that the Honour Guard are behind rather than on the front lines. That's because ogre shooters will probably pulverise them if they get the chance. We've got the Battle Shrine there alongside for the rallying and the Lightning Bolt ability, along with the Standard Bearer, who's got his Lightning Bolt as well, and the Wizard there with his Lightning Bolt. So all my Lightning Bolt together. And then on the left of that you can see the Archer Horde, who are in the difficult terrain, which is going to give them cover, and they're stealthy, so anyone shooting at them is going to have a bad time. And then over on the left, there's only 2 units here, and that's because my opponent didn't deploy much over there. So I basically abandoned deploying anything on that side and decided to concentrate everything on the right. So there's only the Master Sergeant, who can easily get away from this area if he wants, and there's also one of the regiments of Spearlings. One interesting point on the Master Sergeant, the Rhordian heroes, when you mount them, it seems like almost every single one goes to a different speed with the mount. You'd think, okay, maybe that's because some of them are technically human heroes and some of them are halflings, but even some of the halfling ones seem to increase to a different speed when you mount them, which just makes things very, very confusing. But anyway, here is my opponent's force. So on the left, as I look at it, there is a Boomer Sergeant and a horde of boomers. There's some shooters sitting right at the back. It'll be an interesting showdown between them and my archers, because they both have 36-inch range since I've put the Jar of the Four Winds on mine, but mine have started off in cover and my opponents have not. Over there, we've got some more boomers, we've got some siege breakers, and behind them we've got another character, which I think is probably another boomer sergeant. Or that one might be a standard bearer. There's a boomer sergeant there, though, on the left of that picture, with more boomers in the woods. There is a caster right there. Then there is a giant and some berserker braves, I believe. So, the objectives. That'll be the one right in the middle, I think. And on the left-hand side, as I look at it, there's one on that side of the hill, and there's one in these woods. I shouldn't have zoomed in so much, should I? Those were the ones on the left, and these are the ones on the right. No, I think there's one smack in the middle of this. Pretty sure there is. So you can see those four are quite close together, which is why I deployed most of my stuff over there. And in turn one, so I believe my opponent decided to give me turn one, perhaps thinking that, well, maybe there were no tactics involved in that choice at all, but maybe there were. Could have been, perhaps, because I've got Wind Blast, doesn't want me to have the kind of the last laugh and push units off the objectives in the last turn, or just wants the opportunity to jump onto objectives regardless of whether there was Wind Blast around. So sometimes going second is good. So there wasn't really a good place for my Duke to be flying around causing much of an annoyance here. So he's just kind of chilling behind that house at the moment, and everything else is pushing up. My Knights are quite happy being behind everything because they're nimble, so they're not too concerned about being stuck, and the Honour Guard are more concerned about being stuck, but they do not want to get shot. So if they're going to be shot at, there's going to be at least some cover from my units there. So some damage is dished out from my various lightning bolt attacks. So just chipping away slowly on things. Boomer Sergeant takes some damage, shooters take some damage from my archers. I'm confident I'd win that fight since I've got the first shot in and I've started off in cover. And if the ogres want to move into cover, then they are not going to be able to shoot that turn. So not much happening there. Turn one for the ogres, and obviously it's a full-on advance because most of the units are either combat or short-range shooting. So not much to say about that side. The shooters do take some shots and put 1 damage onto the halfling archers because they're stealthy and in cover, so it's very difficult. That's when I remembered that my units were stealthy, by the way. Because I'm sure there's so many special rules, and I piled on so many artifacts onto my list, I'm sure there are plenty of times I forgot to use certain rules, and that was a short turn as well. Not much in range yet for the ogres. So, turn 2 for Rhordia, and you can see that I've pushed one of my units really far forward there, but I can't quite get to that objective. You can see in the top right, if I'd got to within 3 inches of that, and the enemy, if it was just an enemy hero, for example, within 3 inches, then I could potentially control it early on in the game. And it's turn 2 that you can start to score points for that. And I've kept units around the objective there on the right, and in the middle I've got my horde sitting right on top of it, so it's going to be very, very difficult for the enemy to claim those. There you can see, with that shooting from the little unit of archers there, I've got 1 damage onto the berserkers, just making a start on them because they're quite tough to take down. Then this little lightning bolt battery I've got with these 3 things here, the 2 characters and the battle shrine. They've put some damage onto the siege breakers and the boomer sergeant in the woods there, just making a start. Then we've got the archers. You can see that the master sergeant has made his way back over here. Got those ogre shooters up to 7 damage now, so that's looking like a good way to get rid of them slowly. Might take another turn or 2 at best, or at worst should I say. And there's not much else going on because you can't see very well here, but in the bottom left there, that small unit has just moved behind the woods. They're staying behind there because they just want to draw the enemy in and kind of hold them up, because it's that tiny regiment which cost me, let's have a look at my army list here, that's only 95 points, and they are currently tying up a boomer horde and a boomer sergeant. So I'm going to lose a victory point there because I'm not going for the one on the left, and my opponent is going to be able to get that one that they're guarding eventually, but I'm not too concerned about that because I want the other objectives. Turn 2 for the ogres, more moving up. And they're going to be in range to do some stuff now. You can see the berserkers and the giant have double charged that unit there, which is alright by me because I'm going to be able to do some counter charging in a minute, hopefully. probably not with this unit, which you would expect to die. That 2 damage that it had taken, I think that was already there before, so it's probably going to get killed. Oh, you can see a hand there. If anyone can identify a player by their hand, you feel free to have a go. And I think at this point I probably forgot that these guys had stealthy, looking at how much damage is on them from the boomers. And they become wavered as a result of that. So that's the big horde of spearlings becoming wavered there. So not ideal. That small sacrificial regiment of spearlings is dead. I think I forgot that they had ensnare for the first round of attacks. I can't remember which unit attacked first, but I remembered the second time, and I'm not going to make someone go all the way back just because I forgot a rule and run down their clock. So, moving on. Well, you can see here that I've got a couple of charge options here. The Iron Beast is in charge range of the Berserkers and the Giant. And the Giant overran forwards, which is actually very good because there's just enough space now that if the Iron Beast charges the Berserkers, I can then charge into the Giant without... I can double charge the Giant, should I say, because otherwise I wouldn't have had space to fit if they were level, because the Iron Beast would have been sticking out too far. So because he went forward that exact amount, then there's going to be space. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Turn 3 for Rhordia. Again, not much going on that side. But over here, the little shooting battery put some damage onto the boomers that had climbed up onto the hill. And there you can see that. So, if the Giant had overrun slightly less, there wouldn't have been enough space for me to fit both of those units in there on the Giant, because the Iron Beast would have been getting in the way. So it was fortunate, but I didn't do very well in either of those combats, looking at that. Only 4 damage on both of them. You'd expect the Duke and the Knights with their Thunderous Charge 1 would do a little bit more than that to the Giant, and the Berserker Braves, who already had damage on them as well, so the Iron Beast being a bit of a letdown there. Then the small unit of archers, they don't have a target over here, so they've turned round, which opens up the flank of the siege breakers for them, and they do a bit of damage there. So that's a nice little bonus. Turn 3 for the ogres, so obviously the counter charges are coming in. Decides to counter charge into the knights rather than the duke, which is... I'm not entirely sure what the best option would have been there. If he counter charged the duke, it could have prevented him flying, of course, which it can be quite a big deal. But the knights may be easier to kill, and also its unit strength, which is going to help if he wants to claim those objectives, clearing off the strength there. So, up for debate, which was the better option. In the middle you can see he's not too eager to engage now because there's a lot of breath attacks there that are going to be toasting my front lines. And what do? Well, they actually waver the Duke with breath attacks, which is really bad time for me there. So, obviously it's a good roll to get him wavered. And had he not become wavered, then he would have been able to strike at most things, and he would have been able to jump behind enemy lines maybe, but in this situation probably not, because they're breath attacks, they'll just spin round and shoot him anyway. But he would have had his pick of charge options really. But now he's not, and he's just going to have to go backwards probably. And of course the unit of spearlings in the middle that were already heavily damaged, they have died. I think I remembered that things were stealthy by this point though. So you can see that the Giant, or the Iron Beast should I say, has taken some damage, and the Giant has put damage onto the Knights, which is only 3 though, so could go either way, these fights here. The Duke being wavered though has put a bit of a cramp on my style. No one's got any of the objectives yet. Turn 4. So I move my spearlings here into the woods on top of the objective. I couldn't actually make it far enough to stop them claiming it, which is possibly a bad move. I'm not sure whether I actually could have got into a position where they would still have a hindered charge, and I would have also been stopping them from claiming the objective if they don't kill me. Because if they just charge into the woods there, then they're going to be hindered, and of course they are going to have the ensnare to deal with, so it's going to be difficult for them to actually kill that unit, so they might be better off just trying to lightly toast the entire forest. in the centre, you can see that central objective there. That's the only one that doesn't disappear, so you want that at the end of the game. And at this stage, I'm already thinking that the Battle Shrine will be a good option to go for that, because it's not a war machine, it is actually a hero large cavalry. So I want that to be claiming there, because that's the smallest number of unit strength I can use over there, and that I can take away from the fight, basically, because it's not that expensive and it can do damage at long range. I don't want to send, for example, the Honor Guard with the intention of just claiming a middle objective when they're so expensive and they should be fighting. You can see that I delete those boomers from the hill with all the various lightning bolts and shooting attacks, which is nice. The Honor Guard have moved up onto that wall. There wasn't really a great place for me to position them, I felt. There's an awful lot of obstacles around, and the Potion of the Caterpillar doesn't help you with that. You can see that I've done more damage to the Giant and the Brave, or the Berserker Braves, but I haven't actually deleted them yet. If the Duke was around, he would have been able to help with some of this. I'm not sure who he would have gone for, though. Never got a chance to think about that, really. So it's still pretty close there. The Duke just had to go backwards to make space for the Knights to get in there. Okay, turn 4 for the Ogres. So, double charge on the regiment of Spearlings, which are probably not as good as shooting them, because he's going to have that double negative now, with the ensnare and the hindered charge. And that looks like a human hand about to roll some dice. The shooters and the various breath attacks here, they put damage onto the Honor Guard, so I'm going to have to charge them in next time before they get killed, purely from shooting. And you can see exactly how far away they are from the enemy. They are within range of the Siege Breakers, so I'm going to be able to charge them. And this double boomage assault only puts 1 damage onto that regiment of Spearlings, but because I maybe didn't start moving them up fast enough to get them into a better position, then he's going to be able to claim that objective, though, because he's got more unit strength within 3 inches of it. The Knights do get killed by the Giant at the second attempt, and the Iron Beast gets killed by the Berserkers, which is pretty bad. I was confident in this side. I had 3 fighter units there. My opponent only had 2, but the Duke becoming wavered really set that one up for failure, unfortunately. King John says, have you seen the new Halfling and Friends Kickstarter? Yes, the new TT Combat Kickstarter looks very interesting. They've got some undead Halflings in there, which I am potentially interested in. I just have to decide which of them I can feasibly add to my army, because clearly I don't need any more skeletons. They do have zombie Halflings, though. Okay, moving on. You can see there, that's to represent the objective that was picked up there, or it's disappeared really, so they're not actually carrying it. It's just 1 victory point to the Ogres, which I knew was going to go their way eventually, probably. So I'd kind of written that one off at the start, and I'm banking on the other side going well. But the Duke wavering is perhaps undercutting that strategy. So, my turn 5, and with the regiment of Spearlings, I could either countercharge the Boomer Sergeant or the Horde. I decided to countercharge the Sergeant because that way I wouldn't be flank charged potentially by the Horde, whereas if I countercharge the Horde, then the Sergeant would probably be able to flank me. So don't want to get flanked. So just go in there, and I do actually waver him with only 2 damage, which is nice. The Archers, with their lovely shiny water effects there, I think they put more damage onto those. They might have already had that number on them actually, I'm not sure I did any damage there. But you can see the Battle Shrine is working its way towards that objective now, because the end of the game is in sight. And there, the Honor Guard charge into the Siege Breakers, 10 damage, but only able to waver them, which is really bad, because that means the Honor Guard are going to be, not only will they be open to flank charges potentially, the Siege Breakers also have Dwarven Ale on them. So that could be bad. I was hoping to take them out in one go, and very close to doing it. Honor Guard are certainly capable. Usually whatever they hit dies. And you can see the Duke didn't actually kill the Ogre Caster there. It looks like it's only 4 damage inflicted there. I mean, the Duke doesn't have that many attacks, so I wouldn't expect to take things out in one go. And here you can see that the Giant is right next to my Archers. but my archers are currently stopping him from claiming any points for that objective there, because he would have to kill them to get them out of the way, because they have a high unit strength than he does. Turn 5 for the ogres. So the siege breakers pass their dwarven ale check, of course, and I think it's probably the best item in the game, dwarven ale, for value. I'm a big fan of putting it on trolls, but in they go, and that's not going to end well, possibly. The Honour Guard can't take that much punishment compared to the amount they can dish out. And the boomers decide to stand off and just shoot at the Spearling regiment instead and do more damage. The wiser option, definitely. And these shooters are advancing because they want to get towards that central objective that the battle shrine's heading for. So that means they're taking a turn of not shooting. The giant, of course, goes into the archers, but they're not scared. And all the breath attacks around there managed to kill off the Duke. So he's had a very disappointing game. These archers only become wavered though, so they're delaying the giant potentially taking that objective, and I'm going to have the opportunity to maybe shoot him with something else. You can see that the Honour Guard do get killed, they take a load of damage, and down they go. So at this point, I don't think the Battle Shrine, or maybe the Battle Shrine was in range to rally them, I'm not sure there. But you can see that I've got my, I think it's the wizard in front of those siege breakers, and he's the only thing preventing them from heading straight towards that objective in front of them now. And I would like to get the objectives, but I'm running out of units that can actually take them. So I'm hoping to just deprive my opponent any further victory points and then get a draw by getting the Battle Shrine onto the central one at the end of the game. So turn 6. And I put some more damage and waver that Boomer Sergeant with the Spearling regiment there. That's the one that has the Blade of Slashing, by the way. Then the Archer Horde, what do? Well, combined with the lightning bolt of the Battle Shrine, who climbs up onto the hill, they kill off the remaining wounds on the shooters, so they are dead, which means I'm probably going to be able to claim that victory point for the centre. However, that one is looking in jeopardy. I've moved the wizard away because he wants to shoot the giant and try and kill him, and then I've put the Master Sergeant right in front of those siege breakers there. So hoping that even if he gets killed, they might overrun only a couple of inches. And look at that, the giant does get killed by lightning bolt with a nerve roll of 11, and he was not inspired. So he is dead, which means that if the siege breakers can't overrun far enough past the Master Sergeant, then it's going to be a draw. Unless they can get something else onto an objective that's going to score them enough points, which is questionable. But also possible, because I've only got archers there. I'm sure time's running low on the clock at this point as well. So turn 6 for the ogres now. And they scorch that unit again. And I'm not sure if they kill them. Over here, the siege breakers into the Master Sergeant. The obvious move, that's what they need to do. And this unit of archers becomes wavered as a result of shooting, which means that the ogres are not going to be able to get that objective over there. Not that they actually moved anyone towards it anyway. This wizard took some damage, and the siege breakers do actually kill the Master Sergeant, and the roll for the overrun, the first dice was kind of crooked on its side but looked like it may have been about to land on a 6, but because it was crooked, rolled it again and it came up with a 1. But then in this tournament we have 1 reroll per game. Just for 1 dice, it can't be used on whether there's a turn 7 or to choose sides or anything like that. And obviously he had to use it there and then rolled a 5, so he did actually get to within 3 inches of that objective there, which means he's going to be able to claim it. So that means the ogres are going to win, probably. If there's a turn 7, there might be a chance. But there is no turn 7. So 1 victory point was claimed over there, 1 was claimed there, and the Battle Shrine claimed 1 in the middle, so it's 2-1 to the ogres, unfortunately. So, the kill points in this game as well. My opponent killed about 1,400-ish, I killed about 900. So, The final score then is 17-7, which is... oh no, 18-7, that's right. 18-7, the final score. So in this tournament you get a modifier to your score on the old 15-10-5 based on how much you've killed, not the difference in what's been killed. So just sacrificing units to try and get more kills is usually a good idea, unless it's someone you're directly competing with for a position in the table, in which case it would actually matter the difference. So after that game, not too disappointing. There was some bad luck in there. There was some unfavourable matchups. For example, the Duke didn't really have nothing that I saw that immediately jumped out at me that he could have as a role in this game with so many breath attacks around. But also, I'm not expecting to put on a tactical masterclass with this army, so I'm sure there are some mistakes in there that people can pick out. And of course, my opponent did a good job with positioning his various breath weapons and didn't leave any crevices to be exploited, unless you've spotted some crevices, which you can point out in the chat. Okay, it is now time for round 2, and in this game the scenario is pillage, and there are going to be 5 objectives. So pillage, of course, is the scenario where you don't pick up the tokens, you just have to be on them at the end of the game. And I'll show you where they are when we get to them in a moment. And this is going to be against goblins. So you can see that there's an objective there, one there, there's one in the woods with those units, there's one on a hill, there's one in my enemy deployment zone in some difficult terrain or woods, I can't remember which. And let's just go back to the wide shot here. So I think I actually had choice of sides and I picked this side. If I was concerned with such crazy things as actual tactics in choosing of sides, then I would have probably chosen the other side, because there was a nice juicy objective right in the woods that I could have put some archers in, which is clearly what my opponent's done. But because all my stuff was already on this side, it's just convenient to just stick with the same side that you're already on, I usually find. And also there was a nice empty table behind me, I think, as well, where I was able to put lots of stuff. So that's nice. Of course, there is space underneath these tables as well. So here we have my deployment. So on my right flank, I've got my knights, I've got the wizard. So I'm hoping to possibly use that combo over there with the flaming of units, then pushing them back. And if they come closer than that, then they're going to get charged by my knights. Then in the middle, we've got spearlings, we've got a regiment of archers, we've got the master sergeant, the army standard bearer, and the battle shrine, with their combined lightning bolt of 8, which is nice. And slightly behind them, we've got the archer horde, who can stay further back because of the jar of 4 winds. We've got the 2 regiments of spearlings in the woods there around that objective. And over on this flank, there's quite a heavy hitting flank here. We've got the honor guard, we've got the iron beast, we've got the duke. So obviously my opponent's gone big on that side of the table. He's got a troll horde, he's got some mincers in there, he's got a, you can't see the mincers yet actually, that's a chariot, that one, in front of the trolls. There's some flea bags, there's a regiment of trolls, there's a horde of sharp sticks, I believe, there. Moving on, there is a slasher, which is the new Vanguard model. The slashers actually had been totally reworked in the new Clash of Kings book, so I'll go over that at some point, but this is the old slasher. There's a war trombone behind him, there's a mincer, there's another mincer, the standard bearer behind, a legion of sharp sticks there, a horde of archers with a, I think it's a bigot behind, and then there's a giant and another mincer. So nothing for my opponent really on the right flank as I look at it. Turn 1, and my opponent goes first. The archers move forward a little bit. In the centre, the mincer is moving forward faster than everything else. Mincers are another unit that have had a nice update, which I'll discuss at some point soon, no doubt. And you can see it's very congested around there because there's a big piece of terrain right in the middle. Look at that hand action there. And now with the hand removed. over on this side you can see there's a troll bruiser there as well. So it's quite compact over there. And there's a lot of objectives on this side. So the king, I believe it's the king that does the shooting here from his chariot. He puts 2 damage onto the duke immediately. And it's another game where there wasn't really a great place, I felt, for the duke. Because I didn't want him on the other side of the table. I'll get to that in a second, because I felt his hard-hitting nature would be better served over here. And over on the right, I've already got the knights and the wizard, who I think are going to be an annoyance to everything over there. Looking back, perhaps the duke could have been on the right and then immediately pushed forward as far as possible to get behind enemy lines, but then there is a war trombone, which on its own maybe won't kill him. But I felt he was needed over there on the left because there's a lot of meat over there. So you can see it's just been a general advance really from the goblins. Rhordia turn 1, and the duke is in a position so he can see through the woods and threaten lots of enemy units as they advance. Really, I want him to be very wary that the duke could be charging into the flank of any unit that advances, so I really want to kind of slow down his play and make him second guess his moves in the centre. But that 22-inch threat range is quite massive. Battle Shrine moving over this way because it wants to zap some trolls, and it does a bit of damage. The archers do some damage on that legion as well, getting started on that early. These 2 characters are just dancing around. You can see the knights are up there as well. And they've got into the flank of the mincers actually and put damage on them, because that's kind of the handy thing about these little characters. If there's a unit that does have big shield and you want to attack them in the flank, you can kind of dance a bit, and then they've got the long range with the lightning bolt and the bow, so it's quite tasty for that job. The knights have got onto that objective. When the enemy come over here, I'm going to hopefully flame them, wind blast them away, flame them, wind blast them away. We'll see if that actually works though. It's a good chance to try out that strategy though. And you can see that my horde of spearlings have moved onto that difficult terrain because anyone charging them, again, it's just a nightmare. Charging it hindered with the ensnare as well. It's just not going to be a fun time. And with the phalanx means that the mincers definitely would have the opposite of a fun time, in fact. So I've kind of put the pressure on by advancing up, because I've got the speed edge somewhat here. I've got the duke who's faster than most, the king on chariot's fast. The honour guard are faster than trolls, but not faster than the king. Turn 2. So, well, the goblins are really putting the pressure on now because they've thrown forward that horde. I think it's rabble actually, I'm not sure if it is sharp sticks. But they're just sitting there, obviously sacrificial, and if I kill them they've got trolls waiting behind, 2 troll units and a bruiser right there. But we'll see what I do with that in a minute. Over in the middle they've got the mincer looking this way as well. That legion aren't too eager to go forward yet. There's a nice laser there, visible. One of the mincers is moving up. On this side, the giant and a mincer are moving towards those knights. So the mincer's not that fast. So I'm quite confident that I can kind of lead them all a merry dance. The giant is just as fast as my knights, but I do have wind blast on my side. Here, the goblin archers, what do? Well, they put 4 damage onto the battle shrine, and then 5 damage from something else. So it's not dead yet, but it's getting up there. Turn 2 for Rhordia. Right, so here is my grand plan for taking down this horde of rabble and not being hideously countercharged into oblivion. So, the one guy I don't want being countercharged by anything is the Duke. And I don't really want to kill this unit, which sounds strange, but I want to just do tons of damage to them and not kill them, because they're a big roadblock preventing his heavy-hitting units from actually charging me yet. So I want them to live, which I think they can very well do. The Iron Beast, a lot of attacks, but only hits on 5s. The Duke, not many attacks. And the regiment of Spearlings only hit on 5s. So putting the Duke right in the centre there, if they survive that horde and countercharge a unit, if he wants to charge any other units, he would really have to countercharge either the Spearlings or the Iron Beast. If he countercharges the Duke, then he's just completely blocking up everything else from fighting, essentially, because he's just sitting right in the middle there. And if he countercharges one of the other two units, that means he's blocking the Duke, so that no one can charge that. So it's, at best, he's going to be able to countercharge either the Duke and nothing else, or the Iron Beast and the Spearlings, which will mean the Duke is unharmed in combat, and I can then fly over the top of his lines, maybe charge the cavalry if they're still there, and if not, just go over, turn to face a different direction, and then threaten the rear, with the Honour Guard still there ready to strike as well. So I think that's a good way to go about it. When there's an enemy, obvious, I wouldn't say necessarily a bait unit, but they are kind of a screen for their heavy hitting stuff. And I didn't want to throw the Honour Guard in because I would probably kill the unit then. So I'm quite happy to just go in with these 3 units and not quite kill them. I could accidentally kill them and then get countercharged, but at least that would be an enemy unit down and I've still got the Honour Guard. Worst case scenario. So I don't actually kill them, which is what I expected there, and what I was hoping for. So the Battle Shrine has moved round to the left so it can shoot into the flank of one of the mincers, and wavering it. I think the mincers, well, one of them was wavered in the previous turn as well. The Archer Regiment shoot at that mincer and do some damage. So the mincers are racking up damage. Whenever my mincer takes any damage, then it immediately dies, but not these ones. So I've gone for the old Diadem of Dragonkind and Wind Blast trick here, and it actually works on the giant. So put some damage on him, you can't see how much from the camera angle, but it's only a few, and then blast him back a bit so he can't charge. So there you go, good start. You can see a nice wide shot of the battlefield there. So my horde of spearlings are just, they've turned to face the main enemy threat, which is that legion of sharpsticks and the mincer in the middle there. And I'm confident that I can win that battle because I've got arguably better shooting support. The war trombone's quite a way off getting really into the action yet. Turn 3. So, the countercharge. The goblins decide that they're going to countercharge the spearlings. We do actually nudge the unit a bit after this, because you can see here that it's not quite set up correctly. But even with the countercharge into the spearlings, there is still enough room for the Troll Bruiser and the Troll Horde to charge into the Iron Beast. But, like I said, the Duke is now going to be untouched, so he's going to be free to do something else. It was just, it's nice to give your opponent a dilemma like that. They can't have everything they want, they just have to have a little bit. And they have to decide which little bit they want to nibble on, rather than having the full meal at once. The giant and the mincer don't want any more of that wind blast shenanigans, so they've just gone as far as they can, getting right up there to the knights, saying, okay, you've got one more turn to do something, and then we're going to eat you, or mince you up real bad. And I think that's ultimately how that combat ends up looking. You can see that the rabble have been nudged along a bit now to get them in the correct position to centre on the spearlings there. So, in the middle, you can see where the crab is in relation to that mincer, but the trombone has moved right up to that obstacle so it can do a bit of tromboning, and there is a point of damage put onto the knights by whoever that guy is, that character. I'm not sure which hero he was. So, 7 damage put onto the Iron Beast from that troll double charge, and 2 damage onto the regiment of spearlings. That ensnare is quite a big deal in close combat, especially when you're against troops that don't have that amazing to hit rolls to begin with. Okay, turn 3 for Rhordia. So the Duke has obviously flown away. He's flown off over the top. The Iron Beast went into the Troll Horde. Then the Honour Guard and the regiment of spearlings double charged into the Rabble Horde and killed them. So you can see that that annoying king got round my flank as well last turn, and rather than just turning to chase him because he's really fast and nimble, there's no point doing that. You might as well just kill things and then try and turn around as best you can to deal with things. So there is damage on him though, because I did shoot at him with something, but not enough to waver him. So the trolls, I think the purple is 5 damage points and the yellow is 1 each. in the middle you can just see the positioning. I've taken out one of the mincers there with shooting. And you can see I've pushed one of the spearling regiments up there, asking a question of that mincer, do you want to come and fight us? So, the knights, I measured, and with that kind of puny 7-inch move for cavalry, it's not that amazing, so they weren't able to escape the giant's charge arc, unfortunately, which meant that I decided I was just going to charge the giant instead. Did a bit of damage, and that mincer was pretty beaten up anyway. It already had 5 damage on it. And these 2 characters, the Master Sergeant with his 4 bow shots with elite, and the sorcerer there with the lightning bolt 3, they missed with every single attack. So they did no damage to the mincer. Look, there's a picture of the floor just to confirm. So that mincer is actually alive now, so it's going to be able to flank charge my knights, which is the nightmare scenario, because that mincer should have been long dead by now. And as far as the positioning of the objectives, I'm not feeling that it's totally lost just because of that over on the right. It's still going all right, I would say, and the rest of the battlefield. Fairly confident at this stage. Turn 4 for the goblins. So the king goes into the flank of the honour guard, the bruiser and the fleabags go into the front. I don't think I took a picture of where the duke flew off to, by the way, but he did fly over the top of things, and I think he's just looking into the back of the enemy at this stage. The trolls have gone into the Iron Beast, and one of the mincers has a flank charge on that unit of spearlings, and I'm not overly concerned about that because I've got some other spearlings there, and the trolls in the front, so that unit may well die from that bit of mincage. Over here, you can see that double charge is definitely going to kill those knights now. So that, if it was just the giant left alive, then maybe they'd hang on for another turn probably. But the mincer still being alive has really got rid of that idea from my head at this stage. You can see that that legion have actually turned the other way because they think there's danger coming from over there, presumably. They've turned to face the left here. And so has the slasher at the back, which I almost forgot about because it's just been lurking around, not really doing anything. It doesn't have a sharp stick thrower mounted on it. And here you get a better look there. I think the trombone shoots at the spearlings right there. And the goblin archers put more damage onto the battle shrine, and they kill it. The giant and the mincer kill the knights. The mincer and the trolls kill the spearling regiment. The honour guard are dead as well. The Iron Beast is still alive though. So that whole plan did not work out exactly as I wanted. So wow, I would say over there. And oh, I think the Iron Beast does get killed as well. There you go. Just to make it a perfect scenario there. Turn 4 for the League of Rhordia. So these spearlings here decide they might as well charge into the mincer. Why not? Another mincer becomes wavered from shooting despite piling up damage on it. I think it's up to 8. So I must have rolled probably... Is that 8 or is that 7? I suppose it could be 7 and then I rolled a 3 on the nerve test, putting it on 10, which would have been a waver. Makes sense. Then you can see I'm starting to march out towards that objective now because I'm kind of running out of units at this stage. So I need to just be on the objectives. So the horde of spearlings in the middle are going to be my best chance at that right now. And I'm shuffling the archers to the left as well, I think, because I want them to have a go at that objective in the woods that you can see towards the bottom left there. Turn 5 for the goblins. So there's a lot of repositioning for them to do over there because they're worried about the Duke, who you can see behind their lines there, who I may have forgotten to move in my turn. That's entirely possible, but he's still threatening them. And you can see that the king and the fleabags are moving towards that objective that my archers were edging towards. And the legion of sharp sticks who have got damage on them are heading towards my horde of spearlings. And that comes down to it. I think I would win that fight with the ensnare. I think that would just give my unit the edge there. especially since the Legion's already damaged. Then the archers have turned, and I think they started peppering some of my characters with shots at this stage. You can see the giant is just chilling out near an objective, but the mincer has turned around and he's charged his hero into my sorcerer there, and actually kills it in one round. So that was good for him. The mincer and that regiment of spearlings just having a go at each other still. You can see it's very congested around here. So, what are these? These archers take some damage. I think that's from... that may be from the king on his chariot. So that's how it looks at the end of that turn, and it's looking quite healthy for the goblins now. They wiped out a lot of units in one go there. And a very blurry turn 5 for Rhordia now. So they kill the mincer, and then just turn around to threaten on that objective there that the king on chariot is on. I'm not going to get rid of these two by the looks of it, because look at that. I'm piling up damage on them, including the mincer, but they just refuse to die. All those little shooting attacks you'd expect to just plink 1 damage onto them. Even shooting into the flank are just not hitting at the moment. So quite unfortunate there. Piling up more damage onto that legion. Hoping to get rid of them soon. The Duke charges into the trolls because because there's an objective there. So I thought I might as well have a go, but he can't kill them. And the archers have turned, and they're hoping to get onto that objective soon, but of course he can always move forwards to try and block them. Turn 6. So there's double charge on the Duke, who knew he didn't have much chance of killing that unit, but he had to go for it and hope for the best, because there was an objective right under them, and now he's probably going to get munched. The goblin hero that's been rampaging around charges into the Master Sergeant now. And then we're running very low on time at this stage. And you can see here that the chariot king has moved forward right up to the archers, so they're not going to be able to charge him and stay close to that objective, because he's also got a regiment on there, so it's going to be difficult for me to claim that. I do have that regiment of spearlings there to help out though, so we'll see how that goes. He does 1 point of damage in combat to the Master Sergeant, so he's not going to be able to shoot, which means he's going to have to charge and hope to kill the giant next turn. So the Duke is dead. Wow. So the Duke in this game I think probably should have been used differently. Jumping him over enemy lines, and then I think I forgot to move him for 1 turn, which obviously is a bit of a letdown, and then staring back at the enemy to threaten them, and eventually just charging into the front of some trolls. So it didn't end up working out very well for him. So you can see the damage racking up on units around here. And that, unfortunately, is the end of the game, because we were in a bit of a rush at the end because the round was about to end and I still had a couple of minutes left on the clock. So I was just rushing through my turn and didn't have a chance to take any more pictures. But ultimately, this Master Sergeant charged into the giant, couldn't kill it, even though it was already heavily damaged. I couldn't even kill the mincer over there with shooting, because I think most things were dead by that point, but I did get some shots off at it, but just missed again. So the mincer, that one probably should have been dead in turn 1 or 2, but ended up surviving the entire game, even though it was being shot at every single turn. So overall, I didn't end up with any victory points, and my opponent ended up on 4 of the objectives. So, wow, and I only killed 365 points, which, when you consider the amount of shooting that I piled in, look at all the damage on the enemy units, look at the giant's damage, look at the damage that was put onto... Let's see, how much was on that legion. They're piling up damage as well. It looks like there's about 13 or so on there at that stage, and that was before the final turn. So you would think that lots of units would have gone down, but alas, no. And my opponent killed about 1,130 exactly there. So another loss, and the 100% loss rate with the League of Rhordia continues as we move into game number 3. So this time it is the dominate scenario, and it is against goblins again. So you can see that the armies are pretty much deployed in that central area. My army slightly leaning to the left of the centre, and my opponent spread a bit more thinly with a large cavalry horde over on that flank. There's nothing on the right hand side of the table really, because it is dominate, you need to be in the middle, and nice simple scenario. So my deployment, on the right hand side we've got the knights, we've got the archers further back because of the Jar of the Four Winds, we've got the heroes around there to be shooting off their attacks, we've got the Battle Shrine and the Iron Beast behind the Spearling Horde, we've got more Spearlings next to them, the Honour Guard and the Duke behind. Did I see an opportunity to flank with the Duke in this game? Not so much, because there is, hold on, I'll get to it in a second. Let's see here. So there's a chariot, there's some cavalry, this is on the left as I look at it. In the middle there is a war trombone in there somewhere, and there are some sharp stick throwers and rock lobbers as well. There are some mincers, there are some trolls, 2 hordes of trolls, there is a legion of rabble, there's a horde of sharp sticks, there's some spitters there, 2 trombones it is, right there. That's the reason I didn't want to put the Duke on that side, which would have been the logical place to put him otherwise, because there's 2 war trombones sitting there. And over on the other side, there's 2 fast units there, who aren't going to be as annoyed by a Duke flying around, I would say, as some of the more static units are, especially Fleabags being nimble. So it'll be less annoying for them probably. Turn 1, so the goblins go first, and they've pushed forward on the left flank up onto that hill, and everything else has just moved forward, and I'm trying to draw the enemy towards me, trying to whittle them down and then charge in, because I think I do have slight shooting edge if the war machines fail to hit. If the war machines start landing, then obviously that changes drastically. So goblin archers put a tiny bit of damage onto the Spearlings, and that's that so far. Turn 1 for Rhordia. So I've pushed up quite a few units there. You can see on the right that the Spearlings have gone up with the Knights right behind them. They're right behind them so they'll get cover if anyone wants to shoot past there. And then I'm going to be plinking off shooting attacks. I've positioned, those archers are actually in range to be charged by the horde of Fleabags, I believe, but if they do charge, then they would have to deal with the threat of the Duke and the Honour Guard. There's one big reason as well for keeping the Duke kind of to guard this side against the cavalry is because they are so fast, and I don't have anything else to match up with that. So to make them hesitate, I want something faster than them. So if he only throws 1 unit in, say for example if he throws in the King on a chariot into the archers, for instance, then the Honour Guard would be able to go after him, and then the Duke would then be able to fly off possibly into the Fleabags just to stop them for a turn, and I'm fairly confident he'd survive a counter charge from them without their thunderous charge, while everything else moves up to threaten them. So that's 1 damage there, not 10 by the way, from shooting, and some damage onto that mincer as well, and 1 damage onto the archer horde. So just little plinks of damage here and there, converging on the centre, not too fast because I don't want to get too eager to get into combat here. So you can see that the enemy are hanging back a bit there, because there's not really a good option with the Honour Guard and the Duke sitting right there. In the centre everything's pushing up big time though. They've got the speed edge with most of the units around here. And there you can see that side. The archers don't need to move up much because they've got targets to shoot at, but there is cover from most of it. And there's a nice wide shot. And not much happened in that turn, so turn 2 for Rhordia now. So you can see that I do charge the Spearlings into that horde of sharp sticks. There's a nice old school model, it's pretty much all of these I think. There's maybe a couple of Mantic units in there. I think the Mincer and one of the Mincers and some of the Trolls are Mantic, but a lot of them are very old school. And you can see that the Knights have positioned themselves so next turn they'll be able to charge into those archers, which would be very painful for them. And they take a bit of damage from a lightning bolt, I think. over on this side, I'm not too eager to advance at all because I've got a pretty good setup here, the Honour Guard and the Duke just guarding things. The Duke, being height 4, can also see over the Honour Guard, so if anything advances in the middle that he wants to go for, then he can have a pretty good go at that. And some damage plinked onto that Legion of Rabble there. And I wavered one of the mincers there. That pink crystal on the back of it represents wavering. And another point of damage onto the Cavalry Horde. So I'm not too eager to advance and get killed, but I have got units within charge range, and I'm kind of just waiting for the enemy to strike on this left-hand side. On the right, of course, I've thrown the first blow and put the gauntlet down firmly there. Turn 3 for the goblins. So it's a double charge into this unit of spearlings on the hill, which I'm not too concerned about because they're kind of there to block the Sharpstick Horde from going after my knights anyway, so I'll accept that. Then we've got the Legion of Rabble pushing up, and the king on chariot decides he is going to go after my archers, which means the Honour Guard will be able to try and eat him for breakfast, and we'll see what else I do to try and counter the threat of the Cavalry Horde that are lurking in the background there. So a bit of damage done to that regiment on the hill. And here, I think that was prior though, that damage that they'd already taken from shooting. Then the 2 war trombones. Do they do anything? I think they just moved up a bit. And of course in combat that regiment does get killed. No one wants a mincer in the side. And then you can see how it's looking. So I've got the opportunity to charge into the archers, which I want because that's a big blob of unit strength there, which is important for the dominate scenario. And all my other units kind of tightly packed in the middle, waiting to strike. The Honour Guard are ready to go into action shortly. Turn 3 for Rhordia. So the Honour Guard do go in there, and the archers first of all shuffled sideways to get out of the way, and then the Honour Guard piled in and attacked the king on chariot and killed him in one go, as you'd expect, and then pivoted a bit, which means that there is now worked out the angle. There is no way for the Cavalry Horde to actually charge them because there's nowhere they can fit, and you'll see what they end up doing as a result of that in a minute. So I didn't need to throw the Duke at them either to stop them, so that was nice, because if they want to charge into the front there isn't a big enough gap. You'll see it better from another angle in a minute. You can see here that the knights do go into the archers, put some damage on them, got them up to 6, which is an okay start, and it's going to stop them shooting anyway. In the middle there, you can see that I'm still hanging back with quite a few things, just waiting, and I've opened up the flank of my unit, the regiment of spearlings there in the woods, to the Legion, which I'm fine with because I needed to move them into that position to stop a charge of cavalry getting through there into the Honour Guard, which I would rather not experience. And also it's going to mean that if he doesn't kill that unit, or even if he does, he may not have room to pivot at all, which will mean he can be flank charged by the horde of spearlings there. And there's an Iron Beast in there to help out as well. So 1 mincer down, I think. I think that's what that's representing. Turn 4. So he does take that flank charge, which is okay by me. Some trolls have moved up behind as well. Mincer moves up, so that if I do charge the flank, I'm then going to have to contend with possibly the mincer and some trolls if I don't kill that unit. You can see that the Sharpstick Horde on the hill are pushing forwards as well. 2 units of trolls right there next to them, so it's quite a big meaty centre that I haven't really dented yet. The cavalry is still just perched on that hill waiting because there was no gap for them to get to the Honour Guard and they didn't want to charge anything else yet. The artillery just hits nothing so far, so picture of the carpet there. And you can see that the archers do not countercharge into my knights. Instead he just chooses to use the war trombones to shoot them over the top, so it was cover granted there, but they do some damage anyway. then you can see here that he only manages to waver that unit, which means that I'm going to have the flank charge now. Turn 4 for the Rhordians. So, as you can see, on this side, the Honour Guard are still perched, ready to... They're kind of waiting for those cavalry to come in. You can see what the dilemma was here as well, because once he charged in and took that flank, that means that there's no way for that unit of cavalry to attack. If they wanted to for instance, attack the same unit, they wouldn't be able to. And I don't think I think they were possibly able to attack the Honour Guard, but not at the same time as a unit attacking that unit in the flank. That could be how it works, because looking at the angles, that's how it looks from here. One of the units could have been nudged since then, though. So the knights back into the archers, got them up to 12 damage now. Not enough. And the Duke has leapt into action to block up a unit of trolls because I choose to take that flank charge. So I don't want them to get multi-charged by a ton of trolls, so the Duke has to go in there to block them. And the Honour Guard have turned to face this way now, because they're not worried about that cavalry horde. They're more worried about what's going on in the middle and scoring points ultimately. So the Duke puts 5 damage on the trolls, which is okay. And the archer horde, they wipe out those sharp sticks that were on the hill, so that's more unit strength dead. The Iron Beast is just chilling here as well, ready to strike if any, for instance, trolls decide to join the party. And I think the Iron Beast may have used its breath attack to delete the other mincer. So that's nice. You can see that the flank charge didn't really do much though, unfortunately, into that rabble legion in the middle there. Didn't do much damage. It's tempting to think, well, I can get a flank charge with a unit that has 30 attacks, but they only hit on 5s, and it's going to be hindered with that wood that they're in. So it wasn't actually that great of a plan. Turn 5. And the goblins, so they can just fit a horde of trolls into the Duke, another one into the flank of the Spearling horde, and the Legion, who didn't take nearly enough damage for my liking, go back into the flank of those Spearlings down there. The cavalry do decide they're going to charge in now into the archers, now that the Honour Guard aren't looking this way, because they would have just sat there the whole game probably, and I'm not too bothered if they decide to charge in right now. I've got the units that can take priority here, because I need to start getting things towards the centre as the game draws to a close. The Rocklubbers do hit this time, and they put some wounds on the Iron Beast. The War Trombones kill off the knights as well, so that means the archers are still alive, but they're heavily damaged, so I can finish them off with shooting later, with any luck. So the cavalry horde obviously kill off the archers, and then end up positioning themselves like so. But because they're so big and unwieldy, the Honour Guard will easily be able to avoid their charge next turn. Most likely. The trolls put 9 damage onto the Duke, which isn't nice, and you can see that there's 17 damage, it looks like there, to the flank of that unit, that horde of Spearlings from the trolls, but not killed them, so not a very good nerve roll there. But you can see that the Legion do actually get the kill on the smaller unit, and they turn round to face. So, because they've done that, I think there are things I can do now. I've got a charge opened up with the Honour Guard into them, into the front, which is a good option, because then if I kill them I can then turn to face the cavalry horde without having to waste a turn not doing anything. And because the trolls didn't kill off my horde in the middle, that means I'm going to be able to countercharge with them and get them out of the way. Turn 5. So the Honour Guard do just that. They finish off that Legion in the centre. They've got the Potion of the Caterpillar, so they don't care that they were in the middle of the woods. And here the Duke doesn't do much more to the trolls, because they regened quite a lot of their wounds back, I think. And these trolls that were countercharged into, it looks like they're on just 4 damage from this horde, so it's a bit of a bonus, because this unit probably should have been dead by now. My 2 little characters there the Master Sergeant and the Sorcerer move up and throw their shooting attacks at the Archer Horde, because that's a big scoring unit there. Get them up to 15 damage now, and only waver them. So they're not actually in the scoring zone at the moment, but they can be by the end, potentially. So you can see the Honor Guard prepared to be charged by the Fleabag Horde, because it's going to be a hindered charge. They're going to lose their Thunderous, and I think the Honor Guard should survive that. Turn 6, so they have to go for it though, and over on this side the Trolls should be able to finish off that horde of Spearlings now, even with Ensnare. The Rocklobber wavers the Iron Beast. No, because that's really cramped my style now. I mean, look at those Trolls. That's a big juicy horde, 2 Troll Hordes that are actually damaged, that a good roll with an Iron Beast, potentially as part of a combo charge, could have killed one of them, but because he's wavered now, that means they're just going to be able to go around without being Iron Beasted to death, which could be a big deal. So you can see that horde of Spearlings is dead, as expected. Should have been dead last turn. The Honor Guard only take 4 damage, so they're going to be fine. And turn 6 for the Rhordian forces. So the Honor Guard on the countercharge finish off the Fleabag Horde and turn back to face the centre, so they're going to hope to try and get in there by the end of the game. These 2 characters, they ignore the archers because they're not scoring right now, so instead they try and kill some trolls, along with the various lightning bolts I've got on offer in the middle here, but I can only get that unit of trolls up to 6 with all that shooting, which is not good enough at this stage. So, if the game ends now, at the end of turn 6, then the goblins will actually win, because they've got 2 hordes of trolls within 12 of the centre, and Rhordians have 1 archer horde, and the Iron Beast and the Battle Shrine are worth 1 each, so it would end 6-5 at this stage. However, we do get turn 7, and you can see that is representing where the Archer Horde have moved up to now, so they've got into the scoring zone, so I'm going to have to kill them on my turn 7. And you can see the others have charged into the Iron Beast there, but they don't actually kill it. They don't do... What damage was the Iron Beast on? Let's go back. It was already wavered on that amount. So what happened was, before he actually got to do the Iron Beast combat to fight against the Iron Beast with the Trolls, then that was called as the end of the round. So that is actually how the game ends. So we only got part way through of my opponent's turn 7. So he was able to get another unit into the scoring zone, and that's the end of the game. So what I think the reason for that was, first of all, we both had very little time left on our clocks. I think there would have been enough time. I probably had about 7 minutes, so I would have had time to get my turn 7 in, definitely. But at the start of the game, I think we probably spent maybe too long discussing our army lists, and we also had a couple of times where we had to pause the game and get some rules clarification on something. There was something with countercharging at one point that we had to check out to make sure we were doing it correctly. And possibly the tournament might have been running a little bit late by this stage. I'm not 100% on that, but the round was called right there. We were the last game going, so it had to end to keep the day on track. So let's see what would have happened if I had turn 7, because obviously this is turned into a loss now. But if I'd had a turn 7, if he'd completed his turn 7, he would have probably killed the Iron Beast. I think that's a fair assumption, because actually in this picture it looks like he's got it up to 12 damage, so he could have definitely killed the Iron Beast with the Trolls had he been able to continue. And then had I had a turn 7, the Honor Guard would have finished off those Trolls, I'm pretty damn confident, which would have brought the Honor Guard into the scoring zone. Then I would have had my 2 shooty characters shooting at those archers again, and they were already heavily damaged, so I'd be confident in killing them. Then I would have fired the Battle Shrine and the archers and the lightning bolt in the middle at the other troll horde and hope to take them out. So I'd be confident I could kill at least 2 of those hordes. I think I would have killed the trolls on the left and the archers on the right, possibly not the middle one, which would have left the Honor Guard, my archer horde, in the centre. So that would have been, even if I only killed 1 horde, that would have been level points, and then the battle shrine would have been in there as well. So I think I could have won, but I had used my reroll by this stage, so of course I could have double won something had I got a turn 7. So that is another loss, keeping up the 100% loss record for the League of Rhordia. And really, with that scenario, what it usually comes down to is, have you left your potentially valuable scoring units outside of the dominate zone for too long? And a case could be made that the Honor Guard were not in the middle doing things. They did alright in the end. They killed 2 massive units, a Legion and a Horde, but they didn't end up scoring me any points because they're sitting just outside of that 12-inch area. So maybe they could have been used more centrally. Maybe everything could have just been more compact even. But we live and learn. Moving on to round 4. Now at this stage, the player who was supposed to be up against me in this round had to leave, I believe, for some personal reason or other, which meant that I was against the spare player who hadn't got to play any games yet on this tournament because there was a full number of players. So it was his first game of the day, and it was a Forces of Nature list. And there was no actual physical copy of the army list for me to look at. I think it was kind of thrown together something at the last minute. And I could have actually looked at a copy of the army list, but I thought, well, I know what everything is. There was one unit that I was unsure about, which kind of comes back to bite me, and you should really clarify what all the units are with your opponent if you're not sure, because I kind of assumed, and you know what happens when people assume. I'll get to that in a minute. So this scenario is push, and only 1 token each, and the one in the centre, so you want to get those into your opponent's half to score extra points. So on the right flank we've got the Duke, and I'm actually going to use him for his designated purpose in this game. I'm going to push him right up there, 22 inches in the first turn, and then just turn around and look at people menacingly. Then we've got the Knights and the Master Sergeant and the Sorcerer over on this side as well. In the middle we've got the Honor Guard, most of the Spearlings, the Archers, and the small unit of archers anyway. My push token is on the large horde of Spearlings there, with the battle shrine and the Iron Beast just hanging slightly back. And over on this side there was a nice spot to put my archers down, which kind of controlled an area of the battlefield because they've got a long range and they're in the woods. So my opponent didn't deploy much over there. In fact, on this side it's only got a Beast of Nature with Lightning Bolt, is the purple thing at the front I think. The one at the back is a more dangerous character than that, and then he's got some light cavalry at the front there. The big flying wingy beasts of doom there are Talon Riders. He's got 2 hordes of salamanders, one of which is carrying the push token. Then there's another Beast of Nature at the front, and this unit next to the Beast of Nature in the middle, for the entire game I wasn't really sure what that was. I thought that was some obscure unit that I'd never heard of before, but I went through the list and the only thing I can think of that it actually was water elementals. And I was kind of treating them as kind of light chaff cavalry for the entire game, which I probably shouldn't have been doing, but I'm pretty sure now that they were in fact water elementals. I'm not sure why I wasn't aware of that at the time. Maybe my opponent was referring to them by some other name, but we have turn 1, which the Forces of Nature decide to take. And you can see that they're moving up, as expected. Moving up quite far, they've got some fast manoeuvrability here, so I'm going to have to be concerned about that. My main plan is just push right down the middle, annoy the flanks and distract units with the Duke for as long as possible, and hopefully crunch things before he is eventually found out and killed. Because I'm quite confident, probably overconfident, because I wasn't 100% sure what those guys were in the middle there. If I'd known they were water elementals, I would have taken them a bit more seriously, I think. So it just shows, pay attention, everybody. So a lightning bolt is going to fly off onto the battle shrine, which is always a juicy target because it's one of the few things that isn't stealthy. And of course it's providing a nice buff, and it's got that long range attack as well, so taking that down might be a good idea. And lightning bolt over here puts 5 damage. They have lightning bolt 7 I think, so 5 damage on the knights is a really, really good round of attacks, and they get wavered instantly, so that's bad news. And you can see on my turn, I don't think there's a picture of the turn dice, what's going on here. You can see the Duke does get into position so no one can charge him, and he's staring into the flank of the enemy now, being very threatening indeed. The archers and the lightning bolts from around here managed to waver that light cavalry unit there, getting them up to 5 damage. And I'm sure they're only there to screen the more interesting units there, but that's fine. So with this being push, I obviously don't want to hang back too much and have the objectives all end up on my side of the table. I want to get in there, pick up the one in the middle if possible, and keep pushing through. Because if you look at this, if you look at the way the units match up, I think the salamanders and my horde and the regiments I've got there, it's probably a fairly even matchup. If you had my units together there, the honour guard would beat whatever unit that is on the right, which is probably water elementals. And then if the Duke is sitting over there, he's going to be worrying big time. The Beast of Nature, the Talon Riders, are going to be focused on him, and those Salamanders don't want to have their flank charged by him, so he could be a big distraction if he survives long enough. And I was hoping my Knights could kind of join him in that quest and tie up lots of things on that side of the table, which means that the centre of my army could kind of outmatch the centre of the enemy army, because he would have to send over more points worth than I've got to distract him. Which is always the dream, if you can tie up more points worth than you're actually sacrificing to do it. So, turn 2. You can see that those Salamanders are worried about the Duke. They don't want to expose their flank to him, so they've had to just turn round and not advance. The other ones do push forward and pick up a token though, so they've got 2 push tokens now. And over on this side, the wavered unit have a Beast of Nature in front of them now, so I'm not going to shoot at them again yet. And turn 2 for the Rhordians, so the archers and the lightning bolt from the battle shrine delete the Beast of Nature. So that's a good round of shooting there. Also, I've pushed up some of my spearlings right up there into the face of the enemy, into the salamanders and the water elementals, with the honour guard behind. So if he were to just charge in and kill one of these units, I would very likely be able to send the honour guard in there afterwards. Here the knights take a bit more damage, I think, from the Beast of Nature, which I didn't manage to kill off with shooting last time. Well, the knights... yeah, it's my turn, isn't it? So yeah, there's 6 damage onto the Beast of Nature. I decide not to charge them in, I decide to hold them back and just shoot with the Diadem of Dragonkind instead. Looking back, maybe a charge would have been a better option there, but I did also have the extra shooting attacks from the Master Sergeant and the Sorcerer as well. So I thought with all that, that's probably got a better chance of killing them. But alas, it looks like I was wrong. Then, over here, I think actually if we look at the maths, that's probably not quite as good a chance of killing. There may have been something else that was shooting at them as well. I think the small unit of archers might be in range to see that thing. Let's see. Yeah, it was actually. So yeah, with the archers as well, it's possibly better to be shooting at it maths-wise. Someone will be able to work it out. So let's see, where were we? Okay, there we go. So the Duke, staring into the flank still, he repositions himself a bit, so he's now in the flank of the Salamander Horde again, and you can see he's actually taken some damage from the Talon Riders shooting now. So he's not quite as happy, and at this point I found out that he can't heal himself. I haven't really taken models with heal before, as goblins don't really have one open to them, and I always just assumed you could cast it on yourself, because otherwise what would be the point having it on a Duke, because he's probably going to be flying off on his own anyway. But alas, he cannot. So he's just staring into their flank still, holding them up. Turn 3 for Nature. So there isn't a double charge, but there is a couple of charges here. The Salamanders into the big horde, and the Water Elementals into the little regiment. But with that ensnare, they should be able to survive. The light cavalry unit do go into the archers, which is going to be difficult for them because of the ensnare, not for the terrain, because I think pretty much everything in this army has Pathfinder. And you can see that he's actually flown away the other character over there and put it behind the salamanders. I think that's for maybe inspiring and healing purposes. The Beast of Nature charges into the knights, and the Talon Riders delete the Duke. I was hoping you'd survive one more round. That's what I needed. I needed another turn of distraction, I think, to get the centre on my side. He wavers the knights again with the Beast of Nature, which is okay because I've got a lot to shoot at it with. And here the archers don't take much damage at all, only 3. So we'll see what happens there. Not too much damage on the spearlings in this. That's going to turn into a bit of a meat grinder in the middle. But I've still got the honour guard there as backup. And you can see how it's looking. He's actually been able to turn the salamanders in towards the battle. And he was obviously confident that he was going to finish off the Duke with shooting this round. And turned out to be correct. So he's got that huge unit there as backup. And the Talon Rider's now going to turn this way. It makes such a huge difference. If that Duke had survived one more round, that would have been potentially those 2 units. If he'd survived and I could have charged those salamanders in the flank, that would have been quite painful for them. Might not have killed them, but would have severely crippled them. And that would have meant the Talon Riders probably would have been worried a bit more for another turn as well. But as it is now, he's going to be able to focus all his attention on the centre where all the action is. But I've still got the honour guard. Turn 3 for Rhordia. So the counter-charging. You can see that I send... I couldn't fit the honour guard in with the other units. There just wasn't enough space. So I've sent in all the spearlings in there. So there's a regiment on the left, which has gone into the salamanders in a double charge with the horde, and then the other regiment has gone back into the water elementals, so chipping away at them. The shooting onto the Beast of Nature does very little. I don't think I do any damage to it this turn, despite both those characters. They've actually performed quite badly so far today, which is very disappointing. The archers put some damage onto those cavalry there. The Iron Beast and the Battle Shrine are just working their way up, trying to get into the action. And turn 4 for the forces of nature. So there's a bit of repositioning going on there, and the salamanders, who are now embroiled in a bitter fight to the death, have dropped the tokens on the ground, and then the tokens were picked up by this flying character here. So he's going to lose fly and he's going to drop to speed 5, but he is behind a solid unit and he can just run away with the tokens now. And you can see that there is a bit of charge prioritising here. You can see the water elementals have gone back into this unit, this regiment of spearlings here. The horde has been charged by just, I think that's a centaur, something like that. And over on the other side, the salamander horde have gone into the small regiment on the left. Beast of Nature into the knights again, probably going to kill them off this time. And you can see that big horde of blue salamanders there, just really threatening, and the Talon Riders at the back as well. So what do? Well, they shoot at the honour guard and do 3 damage, so I need to get them into the action soon, because they're just a walking target. And the Beast of Nature does kill the knights, but it's on 6 damage. I should be able to kill it, surely, pretty soon. Some more damage onto the archers, but not enough. The water elementals managed to kill off the small regiment of spearlings there. And the other regiment is killed by the salamanders. So it's just horde against horde here, but I've got the honour guard ready to come in. Turn 4. You can tell how light that dice is, can't you, by the fact that it's able to balance at that angle. So, I believe it's actually a triple charge. The Iron Beast, the Spearling Horde and the Honour Guard all pile in, and the Iron Beast being in there prevented anyone else from becoming hindered as well, which was a nice touch because he was taking up the spot on the fence and he has Strider. So that was nice. Managed to kill off that unit there. The Honour Guard finally get into some action. But they are going to get flanked by the Water Elementals because they only went back 1 inch. I think they needed to go back 2 or 3 inches to avoid being flank charged, but that's not going to be enough, the single inch there. Then we have the archers here who countercharged into those creatures and actually killed them, which is very, very surprising. And here you can see how dangerous it's looking for me though, because there's that big untouched horde of salamanders ready as backup, and the water elementals and the Talon Riders in the middle, and a couple of individuals who can get in the way as well. So a bit of a wider shot. So I've got a lot of meat piling in there now, so definitely not over. I'm pushing the objectives back Obviously, if I get one objective into the enemy half and the enemy have 2 in their own half, then that'll just be a draw at that stage, because you get double for having them in the opponent's half. Turn 5, so of course they have to take that flank charge into the Honour Guard with the Elementals. I think it was at this point I started to figure out that they were something quite powerful, because, well, you'll see why in a minute. And the Beast of Nature into the small unit of archers here that were just hanging around shooting at it for a long time. I still haven't killed it, despite getting it up to 8 damage so far. And you can see here that the guy with the objectives is just backing up. And damage is dealt on this big unit, this big horde of spearlings. So they could be about to drop. Damage put onto those archers. The Honour Guard are dead from the flank charge because they didn't really have room to rotate and they couldn't back up enough, unfortunately. Turn 5. So, the Iron Beast and the horde of spearlings double charge into this Centaur Chief, which is what I think it is, damage him heavily, and then decide to roll 4 on the nerve test. So the actual damage amount isn't as high as you would think, and then a horrible nerve roll, so he's actually alive now. Now, I did have an option at this point that didn't immediately jump out at me because it's not something I ever really do. But after the game, it was pointed out that perhaps I could have, at this stage, because this horde was already heavily damaged, I could have dropped the token and picked it up with the Iron Beast, who's not taken any damage yet, and then with his defense 6, start marching into enemy territory. Which is something that could have been done, definitely, but it's not something that generally pops into my head at all. Dropping tokens isn't something that just comes naturally to me in games. It's something I need to think about more, possibly. There's just certain people have certain elements of the game that they just don't think of necessarily. Like there's certain people out there who it doesn't occur to them when to block things with individuals, when to stop their own units bouncing away from combat with individuals. It just doesn't come naturally. For me, one of those things is dropping and picking up the tokens with different units. Maybe I just need to play more games with droppable tokens, and maybe that'll come. But it didn't occur to me at this time. And also the Iron Beast, I've been playing as goblins for a long time, and the most equivalent unit would be a giant, and with a giant you probably don't want tokens on him because it slows him down considerably, whereas the Iron Beast is already speed 5, so I think getting in the mindset of this thing is slow already, it can have tokens on it, and it's defense 6, you should probably put tokens on it. That's something I'm definitely going to be thinking about in the future. And here you can see I only managed to waver that creature now. Despite those two have been following him around the whole game, shooting him. He took damage from a diadem, he's been shot with arrows, but he just won't go down and he's tying up my entire flank. The water elementals have gone into the standard bearer. Or the standard bearer may have parked himself in front of them to start with, I think. Or I think they overran, possibly, and just had to stop at him. Something like that. Turn 6. So yeah, I think they're going to eat him now. The salamanders have a flank charge because I failed to kill that centaur chief. So of course, thinking now dropping the token would have been a good idea because they're going to have it stolen by those salamanders at this stage. And it's not going to end well. And you can see here that I think it was the battle shrine up there has been shot and it was killed. And the standard bearer gets killed as expected. And that is actually the final picture because that was there wasn't much left to do at that stage. The Iron Beast did actually charge into the salamanders to try and have one last chance to kill them and steal the token and draw the game, but couldn't do it. So that's the end of that. And the kill points, I only killed 505 points, lost 1,320 I believe. So that game ends 18-6. So wow. So 4 losses with the League of Rhordia. In the entire League of Rhordia career so far, that's 6 losses and 0 wins, 0 draws. So it's been a very strong start with them, I would say. And I think overall, the list I felt like didn't work as I anticipated. I didn't get a chance to use a lot of the things I planned to use, a lot of the tricks I wanted to do, because of either what I came up against or just the positioning of the units. So very disappointing in terms of results, but let's just have a look at this picture here. So you can see there were some awards picked up for this army, which I've posed them with after the tournament when I got home. Not only did I finish in last place, of course, by picking up 4 losses and barely killing anything all day, but also the Best Army Award. First place in the Best Army category, which you can't really argue with, since my main goal was to try and finish in mid-table and then pick up some other kind of prize, which would have been nice. So I've got to fill up the kind of the soft award half of my trophy cabinet, and now I've got 2 things to go in there. So in addition to this beautiful little glass with Best Army written on it, also got the wooden spoon. Wow, 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 wow. So they're filling up the cabinet nicely over there. And there is the army. So very, very pleased that people actually voted for it as the best army. There were some other very nice armies there as well. Some that were definitely painted superior to my army. But it's not just about the technical level of the painting, it's like the overall presentation. People commented that they really liked the basing, which it's something that I've put a lot of effort into, obviously, on this army compared to the way I normally do things. If you look at my goblins, it's just snow everywhere, for the most part. There's a couple of skeleton bits thrown in, a couple of bushes here and there, but not too much, nothing exciting. With these, there's a lot going on. There's the rocks, which are kind of really light, little fish tank style stones, so they don't weigh down too much. There's lots of different types of grass, lots of different types of shrubberies, and of course there's the very cheap pound shop water effects as well on all of the bases, including the giant crab who's kind of splashing in the water, which was way more effort than it was worth, I think. Trying to get the really rapid drying resin to fit in the right place when it's touching a crab's claw is very difficult, but very pleased to have been honoured with that award. And the wooden spoon is of course a great honour in itself, so 2 awards picked up, double award winner at the Art of War. Looking at my tournament sheet here and thinking about what could have been different with the list, so let's grab the army list here. So instant hindsight let's have here. So the flaws: too many artifacts to remember, because it's an army that I haven't played very much. I haven't got all the special rules embedded in my brain yet for this army, so I've actually got a really good memory for rules and stats and whatnot. Once I've played an army a few times, it generally sticks, but obviously I hadn't really played it a few times before this tournament, so adding in all the extra artifacts as well, half the time I forgot to use them, half the time I forgot about my stealthy and ensnare in the first couple of games. I think I forgot it quite a few times, but towards the end I was definitely more in tune, and I think the last 2 games in fact were incredibly close, so definitely getting better. The game 3 I think was my best chance of winning. Game 4, a couple of things done differently and I would have been in with a better chance, but that was quite a difficult army to come up against, I think, the spare player army. So too many artifacts probably, lots of units who I haven't used a lot. It's a totally new list I hadn't used before, but I used something similar in the last battle report if you saw that. And there are a couple of units that I felt didn't really pull their weight. Even though the Master Sergeant with a bow is essential for the formation, which really, really helps out the Spearlings, and in the other game I've used him in, he did alright. In this tournament his bow didn't actually do that well, unfortunately, but I think he's still worth it. The Iron Beast didn't do very well at all, but I'm probably going to persist with it just because the model I think is really cool. The Battle Shrine, Rallying 2 is nice, but it's only going to affect a small area of the battlefield, really, and the Lightning Bolt 5 is nice, though. For 130 points, is it worth it? Perhaps. Could I get more for that point? Obviously I want volley guns, but I just don't have any yet, because the Bonefields Kickstarter hasn't been sent out yet. I did get an email saying that my order is complete, so does that mean that they've finished processing my order, or they've actually started sending out the orders? I'm sure there would have been an update on the Kickstarter if they were actually sending out the orders yet, so we'll wait and see on that. But hopefully I'll have them in time for the next tournament, the 3 volley guns. And what would I ditch for volley guns? I'm thinking probably a regiment of archers would come out, especially because halfling archers are irregular now, I think, in the new Clash of Kings book, so they're being ditched instantly. I'd keep the Horde probably. Maybe I wouldn't upgrade them anymore. I'm thinking of downgrading the Duke on Ancient Winged Arrowles to a Duke on regular Winged Arrowles, or Diet Winged Arrowles. Winged Arrowles 0, if you will, because he's a lot cheaper, and I think he could perform exactly the same role in my army regardless of which one he is, because having only 5 attacks instead of 7, people still don't want to be flanked by him, but he's just a lot cheaper, and those points could be used elsewhere. And once I've got the volley guns, maybe I wouldn't need all the other little shooting attacks. Maybe something like the Battle Shrine would end up coming out, even though the Crab is incredible. So I could always use that as another Iron Beast, potentially. Do have some options. So, I don't know how many people are actually currently watching this because I'm streaming it in a different way than I usually do, and I can't see the entirety of the screen that I can normally see. Let's have a look. Oh, actually, there we go. There it is. I've just found it. 10 people watching right now, according to that. So that's nice. Hopefully this is the highest quality tournament report I've done so far in terms of the pictures, because I think previously I was doing it in the Hangouts screen share mode, which really pixelates everything to pieces, but this should be in full HD. I think I've fiddled with the settings sufficiently, and it's also got my face in it, so if you're not content just staring at the pictures of beautiful miniatures, you can stare at this instead, in very festive attire today. So even though I lost every single game at the tournament and finished in last place, I could consider the argument that it was the most fun I've actually had at a tournament, playing 4 games. Not even just because I got the Best Army Award and a Mighty Spoon as well. Just the actual games were maybe the most fun. Even though I lost, I think an element of that is possibly kind of the learning experience, because it's been a while since I took an army to a tournament that I didn't know exactly what to do with from the start. You can tell the last 5 or 6 Goblin tournaments I had a set plan going in, and I was able to stick to it. I played with them so much, I knew all the units inside and out. And just learning a new army is something that's a lot of fun, and I haven't done it for a while. The last time I took a new army to a tournament was I took Ogres for one tournament quite a while ago, a couple of years ago I think, to one of the Ulti Bash events, and I actually won a game with those, but no wins for Rhordia so far. Let's see, King John apparently likes the setup. Excellent. I'm assuming everyone else does because they haven't said they dislike this style of report. There were a couple of people saying the other day that they like kind of video battle reports rather than still image. Obviously tournament reports aren't going to be video because I'm not filming entire games, and I'm not stopping the game at a tournament for extended periods of time just to record my thoughts on everything that's going on and report on all the dice rolls. But for regular battle reports it's much easier to do it this way as well. Just the lack of editing time, being able to put up a battle report in the time it takes to sit down and talk about all the pictures that are scrolling past, as opposed to the time it takes to edit a video together with text and everything on it, which sometimes takes several hours. It's a huge difference for motivation, and it encourages me to put out more battle reports. Every single game I play, regardless of the system, turns into a battle report, so it would stack up in editing time if I was doing it any other way. So I think this is the way of the future for this channel, certainly. So if anyone's got any technical tips on Rhordia, because it looks like I probably need them after losing every game and not really eliminating too many enemies in any of my games. I didn't even kill half of the enemy's army in any of the games, and in fact I did score the lowest kill points in the tournament as well. And it's not like I came close to being tabled in any of the games either though. So I suppose that's a positive. Despite losing them all, I never lost. I didn't even lose 3/4 of my army once, so that's nice. I always had a sizable chunk of it left at the end. And I just need a few tweaks, I think. If the volley guns aren't going to arrive for a while, then I'll need to rethink this kind of setup a bit. If they do arrive soon, then obviously that throws the whole list out the window and starts again. And I don't think Rhordia have had too much of a change in the Clash of Kings book. I had a quick look at their entry in there, and the only thing I could see that was going to affect me particularly is that the formation has actually decreased in points. I think it's, let's see, it used to be 45, I think it's 35 points now, so that's just shaved 10 points off immediately off this list. So that'll be nice. and more tweakage required, definitely. I've got some other models, I've got some other individuals, I've got some more spear carrying halflings as well. May give Dogs of War another go at some point, but I think it's tempting just to stick with the spearlings with this formation. The only thing they don't do is hit hard, so you need the other units to do all the killing for them, the likes of the Honour Guard. The Halfling Knights, the Diadem Dragonkind, I'm going to consider that a failed experiment, I think. I think they're just too slow to make the maximum use of it. I could see it on something like Goblin Fleabags. I mean, Goblins already have Fleabag Sniffs who perform a role that would be probably better than that because they have long range and more attacks than a Diadem. But of course the actual regular Fleabags would have more of an impact charging into a flank than the Sniffs would. But overall I'm not sure the Halfling Knights are suited to that task. Them being nimble it's a point in their favour in that regard, but I think speed 7 is just too low for the role I had in mind for them. We'll see though. I'll have to try out some different things, see where they fit in. And let's see. Christopher says, enjoyed the report and what you said about the joy of learning experience. Switching from goblins to undead myself has been way more fun with trying to figure things out. Cheers. Yes, using the same army for a long time, it's fun in terms of how far can I push this in competition. Can I get this right to the top and start finishing in the podium places at tournaments, start having a really high win percentage, which is pretty much where I got to with the goblins. I had a second place trophy, a third place trophy, 6th at Clash of Kings. I was winning the vast majority of my games with the goblins. I was only generally failing to win one game per tournament. So I think there wasn't really much for me to discover with them, other than can I eventually go on and win a tournament, which is very, very difficult when you look at some of the top players that tend to mop up most of the tournaments. If your goal is to win a tournament, then if that's your only goal, I think you're going to be sadly disappointed in this game, because there is a very high ceiling that you have to reach if you want to achieve that. Unless you just happen to attend one of the tournaments where most of the top players just aren't there, which can happen if you target some of the smaller tournaments perhaps. But I think overall I've taken the goblins to their natural conclusion. I'd had success with them, I didn't feel like I needed to keep pushing them, and I felt it was time for something new, especially considering I'm constantly analysing all the games afterwards online for people to see, not only because it should make it easier for people to beat me if they know my thinking patterns and what I'm going to be bringing in my army, it's also what else is there for me to do. I've deeply analysed dozens of goblin games with a wide variety of different lists. I know what I'm doing with them all. What more is there for me to say after a game, other than just telling you what happened? I want people to be able to kind of explore the mental process behind army choices and what's going on in the game as well. If I'm just repeating the same thing endlessly, I think it would cease to be entertaining. So, a new army out there which has started off as low as you can possibly go, losing every game, finishing last. So it's only going to be up from here, I would say, and the audience are going to be along for the ride. It could be a long ride until the volley guns turn up, and then it suddenly could just take off into the stratosphere. But we'll see about that. That might not help at all. It could just be that I'm terrible with them. There's only one way to find out. So, any other thoughts on this list before I decide to wrap this one up? Let's see, the Honour Guard. It's difficult to decide what to put on them. The Caterpillar, it seems like an obvious choice because there's going to be a lot of terrain at tournaments, a lot of difficult terrain. But people can always hide behind walls, in which case it doesn't help. I think it's maybe the best option because it's only 20 points. Certainly more helpful than making them nimble for the price, because I think that costs about twice as much. And then people can still just hide in the woods and they're less effective. So I think possibly Caterpillar is the way to go. It's a difficult one because if you compare them to something like Soul Reaver Cavalry, the Honour Guard do hit harder, but having that defense 5 instead of 6 makes them vastly easier to kill. And they're slower, of course, than Soul Reaver Cavalry as well. I think the nerve is the same. So you can't just put them on the front line and expect them to live. Soul Reavers, which I've used a lot of in the past, I've even gone to tournaments with 2 regiments of Soul Reaver Cavalry. If you stick them on the front line, people will shoot at them, but they're probably not going to do that much damage with defense 6, especially in the early going. The only things you would really be worried about are things like ogre shooters, because most long-range shooting doesn't have that much piercing on it unless you're talking war machines, and then there's a lot of possibility that they just won't hit you. So most of the shooting you're worrying about at that stage in the game, things like archers in the first few turns when you're pushing forwards, Soul Reavers don't concern themselves too much with them. Honor Guards certainly have to with the Defense 5. So I'm struggling to find the best role for them at the moment. Keeping them behind the lines keeps them alive longer, but then they don't get that many combats in, and they really have to attack the first thing that comes towards them, otherwise they risk not doing any fighting, and the enemy can kind of pick and choose what to throw at them. Only speed 7, so it's a tricky one. There are a lot of points. They're obviously amazing when they hit things, but people generally have to let them hit something, I've found. So we'll see. I'll keep testing out different lists with Rhordia. I'm going to be playing them for quite a while, most of the year. When it comes to the next Clash of Kings, I probably wouldn't take them because I would want a Mantic army, so I would have a chance at winning the higher prizes. For example, if they keep doing the America trip as a prize for Clash of Kings, I wouldn't want a non-Mantic army, and then to finish really high, and knowing that if I'd taken a different army, maybe I could have had the prize. I'm sure people in that situation would be kicking themselves. So it's all about the prizes, really, isn't it? Who cares about that, actually the enjoyment of the game? It's just about what loot you can bring home, the trophies, and just the endless boxes of Mantic miniatures that I'm sure people have accrued. Alright, time to wrap this one up, I think. So let's just have a look at the army there in all its glory. It's still actually out on the table. I haven't put it away in its drawer yet. The heaviest drawer known to man, with this 99% metal army in it. The only thing that isn't metal in that picture, the only model, would be the Iron Beast, which is plastic, although it does have a metal model on the base. But even that's quite heavy still, because there's a lot of milliput on that wood. So let's wrap this one up then. Anything else in the chat before I depart? So thanks for watching, anyone that was. It looks like there were quite a few of you the whole time, and I'm sure lots of people will be watching this afterwards to absorb the tactical mastery that sadly didn't materialise in this video. So I'll only have to apologise to all those people, and hopefully you learned what not to do with a new army. And I'm sure it'll go slightly better next time. I'll be targeting a single win at the next tournament with them, possibly, unless I've got volley guns, and then I'll just be targeting podium all the way. So don't forget to check out all the various links in the description. Don't forget to join the Facebook group if you want to stay up to date with all the various things I'm doing. I post kind of hobby updates in there as well. And if you want to post anything in there relating to anything I'm currently making videos on, then you can feel free. And don't forget to check out Twitter as well, where you can see all kinds of exciting things like live show coming up soon and other such entertaining tweets. And don't forget to check out all the various fundraising links, because of course it takes untold cash reserves to sit here and describe pictures that I'm looking at from recent tournaments and recent games, so you might as well just throw all your money at me, to be honest. John says, greetings from Texas. I think that's a good enough way to end it. So, with that, all that remains to be said, I think, is good night out there, whatever you are.